Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into a really fascinating concept from the world of social psychology,
Yeah, we've got some interesting material here. It's pulled from a text exploring something called the Yunkai Toi Trongu.
which translates, I think, pretty directly to the looking glass self-effect.
Exactly, the looking glass self.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack this theory, to understand just how profoundly the people around us might actually be shaping who we believe we are.
It suggests that external perceptions could be way more influential than we maybe think in defining our very sense of self.
It's like we're digging into how our reflection, not just in a literal mirror, but in the eyes of others, helps form who we are.
That's the core of it.
Okay, let's unpack this then. So the main idea is the looking glass self. You said it was formulated by Charles Horton Cooley, an American sociologist.
That's right, Charles Horton Cooley, way back in 1902.
Wow. Okay, so over a century ago.
His fundamental argument was pretty revolutionary for the time. He argued that a person's concept of self, it doesn't just develop in a vacuum.
Right.
It forms through interaction with other people.
So wait, it's not just about my own internal, thoughts and feelings about me. It's about what I think you think about me.
Precisely. The theory basically says that you're feeling about yourself things like pride or maybe shame, self-worth, that kind of thing. It's determined by what you imagine others are thinking about you, their attitudes towards you.
In his book on self and social organization, something about mirrors.
He wrote, each person is a mirror to another person, reflecting one person through another passerby. Really evocative.
It is, and I guess that vivid image is why it's called the looking glass self-effect. You look to others for yourself, your identity.
Exactly. Your understanding of yourself, your character, who you are, it comes from how you perceive others are seeing you.
That really pushes back against that common advice, just be yourself.
It kind of flips that on its head.
This theory suggests that what we think others think isn't just like background noise, it's absolutely fundamental, even, to building our self-concept.
And what's really critical to get here is that it's often not the actual objective views of others that matter most in this whole process.
Not the reality.
Not necessarily. It's our imagination or our interpretation of those views that really drives it.
Okay, so how does this imaginative process actually work? The source material breaks it down, right, into 3 steps.
So the first step is we imagine how we appear to other people. We sort of guess how we're coming across, maybe based on their reactions or just our own assumptions.
Okay, makes sense. Then step 2. Based on that imagined appearance, we imagine how others are evaluating us.
Exactly. We interpret their perceived judgment.
We put words to that perception.
Right. And then finally, step 3, we develop a feeling about ourselves based on those imagined perceptions and evaluations.
Ah, okay.
So this feeling, if we imagine they think well of us, or perhaps shame if we imagine it's negative, that feeling becomes a really core part of our self-concept.
So the quick takeaway from these 3 steps is our self-image isn't just brewed internally. It's like a constant feedback loop between our inner assumptions and what we believe the social world is kind of reflecting back at us.
That's a great way to put it, a constant feedback loop. And the source it provides some really good examples to illustrate this process actually happening.
Okay, let's hear them.
Imagine someone makes a small donation to charity, say 50 ton, as the text mentions.
Okay, 50 tuck. Now, in the positive scenario, the source presents. Through feedback, maybe someone says nice job or just smiles. They imagine others see them as someone who, does charity stuff.
Right. And based on those comments, or maybe just perceived reactions, they then imagine others evaluate them positively, like, oh, they're enthusiastic or they're kind.
How does that make them feel? Probably pretty good, right? Happy.
Exactly. And feeling good about this imagined positive evaluation, it deepens their understanding of themselves. They start to genuinely believe, yeah, I am an enthusiastic, kind person.
Ah, so the feeling reinforces the self-concept.
And they might then actively try to, live up to that, hold themselves to that standard of kindness they now see in themselves.
But the source also gives a negative flip side to this, right? Using the same donation example.
It does, which is really interesting. So same scenario, same 50 tot donation. But this time, the person might perceive or just imagine a totally different evaluation from others. Perhaps they sense some disapproval, maybe they overhear something, or just imagine people whispering, oh, that person's just a hypocrite, always faking enthusiasm for charity work.
So that imagined negative evaluation, it triggers a different reaction, presumably.
Yeah, instead of just accepting that label, the person might self-examine. They might think, wait a minute, that's not why I did it at all. I don't like faking kindness.
So they push back internally.
Right. This leads to feelings like anger or rejection. specifically towards that evaluation, that label of hypocrite.
And through those feelings, they actually clarify their own self-concept.
Precisely. I am definitely not a hypocrite.
So what these examples really highlight is the power of the imagined evaluation. Whether you accept it and build yourself up or reject it and define yourself against it, it's still playing a key role.
Absolutely. The imagined judgment is the catalyst. And you even see this concept kind of embedded in common fictional stories, right? The source points to that classic villain-turned-saint trope.
Oh yeah, the one. Character's done terrible things, like a demon inside, as the source puts it.
Yeah, it goes to a new place.
And everyone there, they don't know the past. They just see this one good act and think, wow, this person's a saint, a hero.
The character hears this praise, sees this reflection of themselves as good, and, well, gradually starts believing it themselves.
They start acting like the saint they're perceived to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in demanding that saintly behavior from themselves, because that's the expectation they perceive.
And then often they end up maybe confronting their old evil buddies to protect the people who saw them as good, maybe sacrifice themselves, and truly become the saint everyone thought they were.
Right. And the source notes, look, while this is maybe a dramatic, often cliched
You
plot,
see it a lot.
it actually has a pretty valid psychological basis rooted right in this looking-glass self-effect. The self they see reflected in others' belief becomes a powerful force shaping the quote-unquote real self.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
The source says it happens in everyday life, too.
Picture a crowded train.
Okay.
A woman gets on, she's carrying a child, it's packed. It looks like he's sleeping.
The kid starts crying, maybe points at the guy.
Yeah, points and cries. The young man, though, he just pretends not to hear.
Classic move.
The mother, instead of, getting angry or confronting him, she says softly to her child, loud enough for him to potentially hear.
Ah, clever.
Let him sleep a little. When he wakes up, he'll surely give us a seat.
Okay.
A few minutes later, the man kind of wakes up, makes a show of stretching like he just woke.
Right.
And sits up properly, giving the woman and child a seat.
Wow. So the miracle, as the source calls it, it wasn't the kid crying that moved him. It was the mother's words.
The key is the subtle shift in the man's imagined evaluation of himself.
How so?
Well, initially, his perceived self might have just been indifferent, maybe even a bit defiant. Yeah, I'm taking 2 seats, so what? What are you going to do about it? That kind of internal monologue. But hearing the mother frame him differently, framing him as someone who would give up a seat once rested, it quietly offered him an alternative self-perception.
Like, oh, wait, maybe I am a reasonable person. I was just really tired.
Exactly. His concept of himself shifted, just slightly, based on the mother's perceived evaluation, the positive reflection she offered him, and his behavior followed suit.
That's a really subtle but powerful example. It really is. The source consistently highlights that the individual is just deeply, fundamentally linked to society.
We seem to need this feedback loop,
Yeah.
these perceived evaluations from others to actually complete our sense of who we are.
It suggests that very strongly. This tells us that often who we become isn't just an internal decision. It's profoundly influenced and maybe sometimes even determined by what we believe others think of us.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The source doesn't just say others' perceptions influence us. It kind of posits that how others think we are can very likely push us towards becoming that way.
The reflection can actually shape the reality.
So what does this all mean then at the end of the day? It means the power of perceived evaluation is immense. It's this continuous, often subtle negotiation between our internal world and the external reflections we think we see.
Yeah, it really underscores that while our sense of self feels so deeply personal and internal, it's also fundamentally social. It's constantly being shaped by these mirrors.
Think about the evaluations you perceive others making about you every day, in small ways and big ways.
And consider how those perceived perceptions,
Right.
how might they be quietly influencing your own view of yourself?
And maybe even the actions you take because of that view.